Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sneha Seth. This is my colleague Shivon Mehta, and we are here on behalf of Mott MacDonald, and we are truly glad for this opportunity to present our work in front of esteemed dignitaries. As our colleague Tanmay Bhatt has already provided a brief introduction about our company, we will now directly move into our presentation. Today, we are going to present our work on catchment level approach. Can we please have the slides? Yeah. So today we will present catchment level approach for managing storm overflow and how we integrated nature-based solution in our project. Here's a brief of what we are going to discuss. We will start with storm overflow, how they are treated, what are the how they are monitored in UK, followed by the triggers and the catchment-based system approach. Then we will compare nature-based solution with grey infrastructure, look at example like SUDs and wetlands and discuss the key benefits, and finally touch on how India is adopting on NBS. So what is storm overflow? Storm overflow is untreated or partially treated wastewater which is discharges into the environment. This generally happens when the flow received during a storm event surpasses the specified threshold. This not only this not only pollute the environment, but they also violates regulations resulting in penalties. So to understand this problem, we first have to identify the cause and to understand and understand the scale of this problem. Therefore, for this, the UK government has installed event duration monitoring equipment at these outfall locations to measure the storm overflows, because we can't manage something we can't measure.
So I'll give a brief intro. Pablo already gave a lot of insight on how these event monitoring systems are in the sewer network. So they are sort of equipment installed at the outfall location, and whenever there is spill, it records one spill into the environment. And the regulator in UK, it's Environmental Agency. They are similar to what we have CPCB and MOEF in India. So they regulates how many spills are permitted for each site. So the black dots that we see on the snip are outfall locations, and this is an open portal that anyone can just log in and see how many spills are going into the sea in their areas or environment. So just for example, this site has 87.14 spills every over the time of 7 years. The average spills were 87.14, and for the most of the projects we worked for, the permit requirement was 10 spills per year. So with that, we get an idea that from 87, it needs to get back to 10. And there could be several issues that could be attributed. One could be underperformance of the networks and system, or maybe there could be incapacity of the system. In the next slide, we'll dig deeper of what are the causes and triggers of these overflows. So from the image, we can get an idea about how the system is connected. When the rainfall hits rooftops, paved areas, the runoff drains off and gets collected into the pipe. Ideally, they should go to the treatment works, but if that is not the case, this spills into the environment. So what is that? That is triggering. We know that with urbanization, our land use is changing every day. Our green spaces is shrinking, which is causing spike in our surface runoff levels. With climate change, these patterns are intensifying. In a shorter duration, we have seen more rainfall coming up, which is further expediting the flow. There are also cases when we see that there are two types of networks that we have, separate sewers and combined sewers. So this work of combined sewer can have both foul sewer and storm flows in one network, whereas in a separate one, it should be either of them. So there have been instances when in the separate network, there has been introduction of either, like for example, if a separate network is for foul, it's designed for foul, there have been cases when illegally there have been some connections that are also connecting storm overflows. So we can imagine if you're not designing for something and there is more than that, it will eventually overflow. And then our networks have been designed for a longer time. So there has also been cases that the systems are designed from maybe Victorian ages. There have been rehab and upgradation, but still some of the networks are not designed to cater the current needs and future demand. So that also leads to spills. And then we know blockages for sure. And sir already mentioned that we tend to flush out solid waste. There is also food vegetable that goes into these network, which is causing blockages and which reduce our capacity of carrying the flows.
In this slide, we will discuss what is system-based catchment approach. Now, this is a source-to-sink method. In this, we just don't give the solution for the end of pipe, but we step back and look at the whole area or the catchment, and we investigate how different systems like pipeline, drainage system, communities, receiving water body interact with each other. Here's how we put that into action. To address the issue of the stormwater spills, our first step was to investigate the root cause. We carried out several parallel assessments. For example, we compared sewage spills against rainfall data to check if rainfalls were the major contributor. We also collaborated with the stakeholder to understand if there was any operational issues or possible blockages. In addition, we used hydraulic model to simulate whether the treatment plant could handle the increasing flow, especially in the context of climate change. From these analyses, we found that in some cases, the treatment capacity was inadequate, while in other cases, there were operational issues. This helped us clearly identify the root causes. By using this approach, we treated the whole system as one connected network and not just separate part. This helped us in making smarter decisions and build more resilient water system for the future. In this slide, we will look into some of the solutions which we have incorporated in our projects. As we discussed in our root slides, one of the major contributors were insufficient capacity of the system. To overcome this, we can use gray infrastructure like upsizing the sewer pipes or increasing the capacity of the STW. But these are gray solutions. They have more sustainable alternative for this, like sustainable drainage system or SUDS, which are the engineered landscape that slow filter and manage surface runoff. Few examples of SUDS, as we can see in the picture, are swales and soakaways. We also use constructed wetlands, which are engineered wetlands that naturally treat wastewater. And if we incorporate these with gray infrastructure, we can reduce the load at the existing STWs. Now, for the operational issue, we can increase the performance of the asset, like increasing the wear levels or increasing the pump run time to make sure that more water is flowing through the systems. In order to mitigate the groundwater infiltration, we can seal high-risk manhole and do lining of the existing sewer pipes. By using these solutions together, we can reduce the spill numbers.
We'll do a bit of comparison about when it comes to selecting which solution might be fit, gray or NBS. So as engineers, we cannot talk anything if we don't have numbers or costs. So gray infrastructures are relatively higher in cost, as we know, for obvious reasons like concrete pipe, pumps, whereas NBS, the total life cost is comparatively lesser because we usually work with more of a nature-based material, such as I would say materials or plants, and then we also have a bit of concrete that is required for lining, but that is all. Then in terms of land requirement, gray infrastructures are relatively compact, whereas nature-based solution requires a larger land area because it is based on more of like a biological treatment. We don't prefer to add a lot of pumps or aerators when we are designing nature-based solutions. In terms of carbon footprint, gray infrastructure has a lot of carbon footprints when compared to nature-based solutions, and nature-based solutions sometimes also act as a carbon sink. In terms of aesthetic value, and we know that gray infrastructure does the work. The treatment quality is very regularized, whereas the nature-based solution also treats, but it also brings us a lot of biodiversity and aesthetics that we would like as a citizen to walk around. In terms of social acceptance, when it comes to stakeholder decision making, we have been working for a quite long time with grey infrastructure over the decades. So we are quite confident with what are we doing, how we can do, and how we can implement them. Whereas in terms of nature-based solution, it's quite a emerging technologies. We don't have a lot of capacity when it comes to contractors and designers, and we are still figuring out what are the standard guidelines and solutions. So there is sort of a bit of difficulties when it comes to deployment and social acceptance, but we need to have a mindset change and think of a larger picture while selecting our technologies. So I'll briefly touch upon how, when we were doing some of our project, how we decided where we can implement SUDs and what is sort of a replacement while looking for from a grey infrastructure perspective. So in a simple layman language, if there is a requirement for adding more sewer pipelines in a network, in that case we were preferring if we could separate the storm overflow from the foul sewer, and when we are separating, in place of having a pipe, we could go for a SUDS feature like a swale, so that we don't have a concrete pipe or a plastic pipe laying around. And also, and then there is a challenge, we need to look if there is a land availability, that sort of feasibility, but we sort of try to do an analysis, not just directly say that, okay, we lay this much kilometers of pipeline while working on our projects. And then another one that we have been working on, and this photo is one of our project that we did in the UK for treating clean water. So we are trying to incorporate constructed wetlands, and there are very different forms of constructed wetland, like floating wetlands, horizontal wetlands, and we try to incorporate them with our existing sewage treatment works, so that the capacity increases, but we don't come up with a lot of grey infrastructure at the same time.
Now we will discuss the benefit and the challenges. Nature-based solutions provide lots of key benefits. They improve public health by enhancing air and water quality, support biodiversity through habitation creation, act as a carbon sink mitigating the climate change, and also strengthen climate resilience by reducing flood and heat risk.
In terms of challenges, we already touched upon most. I'll just briefly touch upon how so nature-based solutions is a biological treatment, and it varies when there is a temperature difference. In terms of tropical temperature, they work really well, but if it's a colder region, we need to think through how we can maybe isolate them to make it temperature resistant. And there is also a difficulty in quantifying the benefits, such as what is the biodiversity net gain, for example, or how the human health has increased, what is the improvement in air pollution, just having an NBS. So that sort of limitation is there, but there's a lot of studies going parallelly to mitigate those sort of decision-making challenges that we are having.
India is seeing promising experience in NBS like East Westland in Kolkata, FTW in Indore, and SUDS installation in Pune. But most of this are in early stage or focus mainly on wastewater. There is a significant opportunity for wider adoption of stormwater management and reducing spills. So, because of the time constraint, we would like to just conclude. So the UK approach to urban stormwater management highlights 5 key points. Adopt a catchment by perspective to see system as interconnected. Use data-driven planning to prioritize solution based on evidence. Design hybrid blue-green infrastructure that works with nature. Promote collaboration across the sector through public-private partnership. And finally, reform policies to enforce accountability and reduce pollution.
Just to conclude by saying, we are not here to say what is the best fit solution here, but maybe share our experience, and maybe globally we can see what is adaptable in our context and countries going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.